into the bigger picture of Nordic security? Because it doesn't end there, right?
No, absolutely not. This is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Yeah.
We need to zoom out a bit, look at the bigger picture of Nordic defense cooperation as a whole.
Okay, so how do we zoom out? Where do we go from here?
Well, that's where NORDEFCO comes in.
Nordifico.
NORDEFCO, yeah.
It sounds kind of like, I don't know, some top-secret spy organization.
Right, like something out of a Bond movie.
Yeah, with code names and hidden layers. And...
Right, exactly.
So what is it? Give us the lowdown.
Well, it's not quite that exciting, but it is important.
Okay.
NORDEFCO stands for Nordic Defense Cooperation.
Okay.
And it's basically an alliance between 5 countries: Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden.
Gotcha. So all the key players in the region.
Exactly, all working together.
And it's been around for a while, right? I feel like I've heard that name before.
Yeah, it's not brand new, but it's definitely gained a lot more, I guess, momentum recently.
I can see why.
Yeah, especially with Finland and Sweden officially joining NATO this year.
Right. Huge development.
So how does that change how NORDEFCO works? Because now you've got NATO in the mix too.
Yeah. It adds a whole other layer for sure.
Right.
I mean, with Finland and Sweden now in NATO, it means NORDEFCO is kind of like naturally more aligned with NATO's overall goals, you know?
Right, right.
But here's the thing, and this is what makes it so interesting. NORDEFCO lets them do things together, collaborate in ways that they couldn't necessarily do only within NATO.
Oh, interesting.
It's like having a smaller, more focused team within the larger group, if that makes sense.
Okay, I get it, yeah.
They can really zero in on the specific security challenges that are unique to their region.
So it's like a smaller, more agile team within a larger alliance.
Exactly.
Got it. More flexibility.
And speaking of being focused, there was that big announcement back in April 2024.
Yeah.
That seemed to signal a real shift, like NORDEFCO was getting more ambitious.
You're talking about Vision 2030, right?
Exactly. Vision 2030, I mean, just the name.
I know, it sounds very futuristic.
Like, are we talking laser beams and teleportation? What's in this vision?
No, not quite that advanced, but it is about some pretty cutting-edge technology.
Okay.
But the core of Vision 2030, if you boil it down, it's about making sure those Nordic countries can work together seamlessly
Okay.
on joint military operations.
Got it.
Making sure they're prepared for anything, that they can act quickly and in a coordinated way.
Which is crucial these days, right?
Absolutely, especially in today's world where things can change so fast.
You don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly. You got to be ready.
It definitely sounds like they're stepping up their game.
Oh, for sure.
And you know what's interesting? There's one place that keeps popping up in all of this.
What's that?
The Faroe Islands.
Yeah, they're hard to ignore these days.
It's like they're suddenly front and center.
It's true. They've definitely become more central to all of this.
Why do you think that is?
Well, we have to talk about location, location. You know?
Why geography matters?
Yeah. The Faroe Islands are in a really interesting spot strategically.
Okay, so for those of us who maybe haven't looked at a map lately,
Sure.
give us a little geography lesson.
Yeah, of course.
Where exactly are they, and why are they so important in all of this?
So the Faroe Islands are in the North Atlantic, kind of northwest of Scotland.
Okay.
If you're looking at a map, they're kind of halfway between Iceland and Norway.
Okay.
And that location puts them right in the middle of everything happening in the North Atlantic and the Arctic.
Got it.
And both of those regions are seeing, well, they're becoming more and more geopolitically important.
Contested, right?
Exactly. There's a lot at stake.
So they're in a strategically important location. We've established that.
Yeah.
But it's more than just that, right?
Right.
Because we came across a few things that suggest they're becoming like a central point for actual discussions about regional security.
Exactly. It's not just about their location on the map. It's about the conversations that are happening there. Like, remember, the Nordic Council chose to have their big April 2024 meeting in the Faroe Islands,
Right. Yeah.
specifically to talk about security in the North Atlantic.
That's not a coincidence.
Exactly. I mean, that theme session brought together all these important officials and experts from all over the Nordic region
Right.
to talk about the exact issues we're discussing. The security concerns, the increased military presence, the need for cooperation, all of it.
It's like everyone's looking at the Faroe Islands and thinking, okay, we need to talk about this.
Right. It's like they're at the center of the chessboard now.
And it's not just talk, right? Because we're seeing actual military activity in the region ramping up,
Absolutely. There's definitely been an increase.
especially when it comes to the United States.
Right.
I mean, they had a pretty important visitor recently.
You're talking about the USS Delaware.
Exactly. That was a big deal.
Yeah, the USS Delaware, which for those who don't know, is a nuclear-powered submarine,
Yeah,
made a historic visit to the Faroe Islands back in June of 2023.
I remember that.
And it was a big deal because it was the first time ever, first time that a U.S. nuclear submarine had visited the islands.
The first time ever.
Ever.
That really drives home how seriously everyone is taking this.
Absolutely. It was a clear signal.
Yeah,
The U.S. has been very clear about their commitment to security in the North Atlantic and the Arctic. And that submarine visit, I mean, that was a very visible way of showing that commitment to everyone watching.
it's like they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly. Actions speak louder than words.
Right,
But it's important to remember this isn't just about the U.S. going it alone.
right,
They're very focused on working with their allies and partners in the region.
right. It's a team effort, like we were talking about before.
Exactly. A team is.
And the U.S. Embassy in Denmark, which also covers Greenland and the Faroe Islands, they've made it clear that they're working closely with both the Danish and Faroes governments on all of this.
Which makes sense.
So they're all on the same page when it comes to security in the region,
Yeah, it seems like they're all singing from the same hymn sheet.
which is important.
Absolutely, especially given the stakes.
And it reminds us that these concerns, these aren't just local or regional issues.
Right. They're not isolated.
They really do have global implications.
They do, yeah. What happens there affects everyone.
Yeah. So where does that leave us?
Well, we've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure.
I know, right?
We started with Denmark and Norway teaming up,
Right.
talked about the growing importance of Nordefco, and now the Faroe Islands taking center stage. It's a lot to process, for sure.
It's a lot, yeah.
But if we try to see the bigger picture here, I think what we're seeing is a region, the North Atlantic, that's really going through some big changes when it comes to, well, everything really, but especially security.
Yeah.
Nordic countries are definitely stepping up their cooperation on defense, that's clear.
Right.
It's driven by those shared security concerns we've been talking about, but also by this desire to create a more stable region.
Right, to head off any potential problems.
Exactly. And at the heart of all of this are the Faroe Islands.
Right.
Their location makes them crucial, a real focal point for discussions, for cooperation, and yeah, even for military activity.
So for our listener, I think the key takeaway here is that what happens in the North Atlantic doesn't stay in the North Atlantic.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Yeah, absolutely.
These new alliances, the increased military presence, it all has these ripple effects, and they extend way beyond just that region.
Yeah, it's like throwing a stone in a pond. Those ripples just keep going.
And we're all part of that pond, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. We're all connected.
It's a truly interconnected world.
Yeah.
What happens in one corner of the globe really can have a huge impact on everyone else.
That's the reality of it.
So, on that note, maybe a bit of a heavy note,
Right.
we'll leave you with this.
Okay.
What are the long-term implications of all of this?
That's the big question.
It is, yeah.
Hmm.
What does this increased military presence and cooperation in the North Atlantic actually mean for the future?
Mm-hmm.
Not just for the region, but for the world.
Yeah. What's the legacy going to be?
Exactly.
Just something to think about.
It is. And it's something we should all be thinking about as we, try to navigate this increasingly complex world.
Absolutely. The more informed we are, the better.
It's like you said, throwing a stone in a pond, those ripples, they just keep going.
They do.
And we're all in that pond together.
We are.
So we've talked about the big picture stuff, the agreements, the alliances.
Yeah, right.
But I keep thinking about the actual impact,
On the ground.
Yeah, what does this ramped up security presence actually mean for everyday life, for people living in these regions?
Right, because it's not just happening on a map or in a strategy meeting.
Exactly.
It affects real people's lives in very real ways.
So what are we talking about here? Give us some examples.
Well, let's take the Faroe Islands again.
Okay.
Their economy, for a long time, it's been pretty much all about fishing.
Right, that's what they're known for.
Exactly. But now you've got this increased military presence,
Right.
and that creates new opportunities, new possibilities.
Like what?
Think about things like logistics, infrastructure, even potential jobs related to those defense contracts we talked about.
Oh, right, because if you've got more military activity, you need more support, more infrastructure.
Exactly. It creates this whole ripple effect throughout the economy.
But, I mean, it can't all be positive, right? There must be some downsides, some concerns.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what are people saying?
Well, some people are worried about the environmental impact.
Right, more ships, more planes, more activity.
Exactly. It takes a toll.
And that's a big deal in a place like the Faroe Islands, where the environment is so important.
Absolutely.
No.
And of course, there's the concern that all of this, the increased military presence, it could make them a target if things were to ever escalate.
Right. No one wants to be caught in the middle if things go south. It's like
Exactly.
a double-edged sword in a way. It is. Both good and bad, depending on how you look at it.
Right. And that's why it's so important to really examine all sides of it to understand the complexities.
Because there are always going to be winners and losers with these kinds of big geopolitical shifts.
Always.
And it's the people who are often caught in the middle, whose lives are directly impacted in ways they never could have imagined.
Precisely. And that's why we need to keep talking about it, keep asking those tough questions.
Keep making those connections between the big headlines and the everyday realities on the ground.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, it's about people.
It always comes back to that.
It does.
So as we wrap things up here, I
Yeah.
keep coming back to this question of long-term implications.
All right. What's it all going to mean in the long run?
Exactly. What does it mean for the future of the North Atlantic? What kind of legacy will all of this leave behind?
The million-dollar question.
It really is.
And unfortunately, we don't have all the answers. Right. But I think one thing is clear. The decisions being made right now, today, they're going to have a lasting impact on the region.
For years, maybe even decades to come.
Absolutely. It's a defining moment for the North Atlantic.
And I think that's something for everyone listening to keep in mind, no matter where you are in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, I think we've done our best to unpack this whole Nordic security situation.
That's been quite a deep dive.
It has. From bilateral agreements to regional alliances, from the Faroe Islands to the global implications of it all.
A lot to cover.
It really is. But hopefully you, listening, are now a little more informed, a little more aware of what's going on in this corner of the world and why it matters.
That's the goal.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
And we'll be here to help you make sense of it all.
Exactly. Thanks for listening, everyone.